Hi, it's Irene Weinberg, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. Before we get started with the episode, make sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching so you never miss an episode. Every week, we share heartfelt stories, spiritual insights, and practical guidance to help you navigate grief and trauma, find hope, and discover rebirth after loss. By subscribing, you'll get access to every episode and join our supportive community on this journey. Thanks for being here, and let's dive in. Hi, everyone. I hope this message finds each of you so very well. I'm speaking to you today from my studio in West Orange, New Jersey, and I could not be more delighted to welcome Heather Hester, who is the creator and host of the podcast More Human, More Kind, the founder of a support and education platform called Chrysalis Mama, and the author of Parenting with Pride, Unlearn Bias and Embrace, Empower, and Love Your LGBTQ plus teen. Heather, whose journey into this work is profoundly personal, is a speaker, writer, and fierce advocate who has made it her mission to help parents, allies, and organizations move from confusion and fear into clarity, compassion, and courageous action. She is the mother of 4 extraordinary children, 2 of whom are LGBTQ+, and the wife of the funniest guy she knows. At her core, Heather believes in the magic of human connection and in the idea that belonging isn't just a feeling, it's a practice we choose every day. I could not agree more. When their son came out as gay in 2017, it opened the door to a transformative period of unlearning, growth, and radical love, one that revealed how many families were quietly searching for supportive, shame-free spaces to navigate similar experiences. What began as a deeply personal response to her own family's evolution has since blossomed into a powerful platform offering inclusive coaching, LGBTQ plus and human first consulting, and storytelling-driven workshops that invite people to show up authentically and grow with courage and compassion, which makes Heather's story an inspiring one of grief transforming to healing and rebirth. Whether she's coaching one-on-one, speaking on stage, writing, or hosting her podcast, Heather brings a gentle honesty and a deeply human presence to conversations about identity, mental health, parenting, and belonging. Her work blends lived experience with research-backed insight, creating spaces where vulnerability becomes a source of strength and where healing becomes a shared, courageous practice. I'm looking forward to talking with Heather, who's joining us from Wilmette, Illinois, about the transformative period of unlearning, growth, and radical love that began when her son came out as gay. We'll explore the many ways grief can surface in parenting, the 4 transformations that gently but purposefully guide parents toward fully supporting and loving their LGBTQ plus child, why healing is essential for growth, and so much more. At its heart, this conversation is a reminder that when we choose to lead with humanity, we create the conditions for healing for ourselves and for one another. Hi there, and welcome to the Grief and Rebirth podcast. I'm your host, author and trauma survivor Irene Weinberg, here to encourage you wherever you are in your healing journey. In each episode, I chat with incredible grief and trauma specialists, healers, mediums, and celebs, as well as remarkable people who have inspiring healing stories to share. If you're looking for a podcast that's both uplifting and inspiring, you've found it. Let us help you find your joy in life. Hi, Heather. A warm, loving welcome to Grief and Rebirth podcast.
Thank you, Irene. That was such a lovely introduction. I'm very humbled. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's who you are. And I really love for people to know the expertise and the humanity of the person they're going to be listening to today. They're going to learn a lot. And you have a lot to teach us because how many of us really are part of this community? It's a lot to learn. So let's start about what does LGBTQ plus mean? Exactly. I mean, some people know what some of those letters mean, but
I think
don't think they know all of them.
that's a great first question and one I am very commonly asked. So there's nothing wrong with asking it. So L is lesbian, G, gay, B, bisexual, T, transgender, Q, there's some discussion on what Q stands for. Some say Q stands for queer. Some say it stands for questioning. So it kind of depends on who you're talking to. And of course, now you will see sometimes written some more letters before the plus sign. Sometimes people will have an I on there, which stands for intersex. A stands for asexual. And the plus, of course, then incorporates all of the orientations and identities that are not already listed there. So
if someone is queer, does that mean, is that different than being LGB too?
No. No, a lot of times
it's a package of all that.
Yeah, queer, it depends on who's using it. I mean, and it kind of is like a generational term, like kids that are like Gen Z kids, my kids' age, tend to use queer as more of a descriptor of their community. I'm part of the queer community. So it's like encompassing all. And sometimes it can be used as, I don't really feel like putting a label on my identity or on my orientation. So I am queer. So somebody might use it in that way as well.
Oh, it's so interesting. And have you thought about, is it more generated genetically in people or is it experiential when kids come out this way? Do you believe that it's a gene that they have, or is it a product of their environment, or all of the above, or I think that there are a lot of studies that are going on. I firmly believe that this is how people are created. And so, my short answer to that is, if you have ever known someone and watched them come out, especially a younger person, you will know without a doubt that it is not a choice. It is not based on a TikTok that they saw or some person that they were hanging out with. It is part of who they are as a human being. So that doesn't really answer either of those very, but that's for me. But I think it's, to me, I always thought that's how we're built. We're built heterosexually, we're built gay, we're built whatever that is.
Well, I think the best way to think about it is, for anybody who's heterosexual, when did you decide to be heterosexual? You didn't, right? That's just the way you were wired. So anybody who is gay, it's just the way they're wired. Yeah. And I think that might be, I think that's one of the easier ways to just wrap your head around it. It's not something that one day a kid wakes up or a young adult wakes up and is like, hey, this sounds fun, because
it's a whole community, and it's just like with anything else, it's difficult, and they're struggling, and it's even harder for them because there's so many prejudices against it. So let's talk about your personal story. What was it like for you and your husband when your son came out as gay in 2017? And how old was he at that time?
He was 16 years old.
16. And how did this reveal how many families were quietly searching for this supportive, shame-free space to navigate similar experiences?
Well, it took a little while to actually reveal that, because we were very much in our own space of surprise, and then dealing with a lot. My son really struggled when he first came out in those first.
Did you expect it? Did you suspect it at all? Not at all.
We did not. We did not expect
it in any way.
No, he had, and what I know now is that he was working so hard to appear a certain way, to present a certain way. He is the oldest of 4 kids. Even though my husband and I, raised our kids very differently than the way we were raised. Of course, your kids are always aware of, like, generationally how, grandparents, aunts and uncles believe and think. And that has a great deal to do with the way that they respond in the world. And so that affected him a great deal. So those first 18 months were really, really tough. And we were dealing with some very, very intense mental health struggles. He attempted his life a couple of times. He had some pretty significant substance use issues. So it took us a little time of getting him the support he needed and the help he needed, and really just protecting our family of 6 before we got to a place where it was calm enough for me to start looking outward and realizing, oh, we're definitely not alone in this, but it's also quiet because everyone else is feeling this way, right? Every other parent is feeling this, like, I don't know who I can talk to. I don't know where to ask questions. I don't know where to find good information. What is good information, right? What is true? What is not true? What is disinformation or misinformation? All these things we're learning now, right? And so once I realized, like, I have all this incredible information that I have now gathered over these past 18 to 24 months, and there are other people out there who are going through the exact same thing we did and are struggling in the same ways and are feeling the same intense fears and worries and all the things that you go through as a parent. And I just figured, well, somebody's got to do something about it. I'm going to be that somebody. So
it's fantastic. When your son came out to you, did he say, Mom and Dad, I really have to talk to you about something? How did he stage that? He must have been so nervous.
Oh my goodness. Well, you'll actually love this story. He chose a weekend that my husband and I were actually traveling. I never traveled. When I was raising, I was fortunate enough to be able to stay home with our kids. So I was a stay-at-home mom. And so I rarely traveled. My husband traveled all the time for work. And so this was a weekend that was a couples weekend. And my parents had come into town, which was definitely part of this equation of what happened, because my parents were very, very conservative, evangelical Christian.
Oh my goodness.
Fill in all of the blanks. And so we were 2,000 miles away, and my son ran away. The first night we were gone, he ran away. And my mother called me, frantic, of course. Can't find Connor. Where's Connor? Do you know where he is? I'm like, I'm 2,000 miles away, so I'm supposed to not be parenting right now. And so, of course, she had my my next younger child, who's his sister, who he told everything to. But she was 13. So you think about, like, how young a 13-year-old is, right? To, like, be thrust into all of this.
She was carrying all this.
Oh, she was carrying so much. And I'm calling his friends, I'm calling moms, and nobody knows anything except for one friend. And one friend said, Mrs. Hester, I can't tell you where he is, but he's okay. Just know that he's okay. And I was like, well, I appreciate the fact that you think he's okay, but as his mother, being so far away, and it was, the middle of the night in Chicago in February, it was like 2 degrees out. And so eventually I was like, listen, I've got to call the police. So I had been calling his phone, and just like, it was ringing. And so I knew that it was still on, like he hadn't shut it off. And so I just left him a message saying, listen, honey, I'm so worried, and I'm going to have to call the police to come look for you. And lo and behold, about 2 minutes later, he called me back, and he's crying, and he's, and I was so relieved just to hear his voice. I mean, I was just like, the relief, like, that relief where you're just like, oh, thank God. Like, he is okay. He's alive. Like, literally, he could have told me that he had grown like 5 new eyeballs and dyed his hair 13 colors. Like, I would not have cared. And that's such an odd example, but that's just what came to mind. So he said, Mom, he was like, Mom, I got to tell you something. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And he was like, it's like, sniffling and crying, I'm gay. And I was like, well, thank God, because I thought you were dead. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, really? And he's like, you're okay with me being gay? And I was like, of course I'm okay with you being gay. And like at that, in that, all the little pieces that go in your brain, like there was a piece of me that like cataloged the fact that he thought that I might not be okay with it. Right. So I was like, oh, but in that moment.
But also though, he had that evangelical Christian.
Right.
Dogma.
And that's what had him, that's what got him running. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what, because he was like, I said, okay, just stay on the phone with me and let's get you home. And he was like, we're not telling grandma and grandpa. And I was like, absolutely not. We are not telling grandma and grandpa. All I'm going to say is you have some things that you're really stressed about and you just need some love. And, we'll be on the next plane coming home. And so, teach me to take a vacation. And so
I can just imagine the conversation with your husband on the way home. Oh my God, honey, when are we coming home to? Oh,
right. I mean, he was like, he couldn't hear what was going on. Right. So he's standing next to me, totally panicked. And he hears like of course I'm okay. Like, what? And he's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, our son's just gay. It's okay. He's alive. And he was like, wait, what? So that was the beginning. And that's how he told us. And it was dramatic. And, my heart's still like, whenever I tell the story, literally every single time I tell the story, I still get tears in my eyes when I tell it. And he's so cute about it now. But
how lucky he is to have you for his mom. I mean, really, that you were accepting and that you were loving, and it was the beginning of a journey for you too. So I want to ask you, what is the intersection of queer identity and grief? Because obviously grief, once you find this out, it's bringing grief. And how do parents create? I mean, here you're in the middle of this and you're trying to create a healing, affirming home before you even know what's going on. That navigates not just grief over his change in identity, but now he's dealing with social stigma, internalized fear, which you're talking about. How you want to explain that? Because did that take a long time for you to create that healing, affirming home? Like, what was that process like? And how did you deal with the grief of that? Because he was grieving the loss of his what he thought was his identity also.
Oh, absolutely. And I love this question because for so many reasons. There's so many layers to it. So I have a lot to say about it, so just stick with me for a moment. The grief, realizing what I was feeling was grief, took me a while. Understanding that is what Connor had been going through to some degree took me a while. That it took a while to get from, okay, he's gay. Now I need to understand, what does he need, right? What do I need to learn? What do I need to unlearn? Because that was a whole thing also. Because I will back up for one moment and just say, in that moment when he told me that, given my background, given the way that I grew up, even though I had left most of that behind, it's still part of our fabric, right? And it's times like this where you realize that you still have some of these biases that are hanging around and that are sticking points. And so in that moment, I remember standing there in that room and thinking, there is no way that my child is going to hell, because that's all I'd ever heard, right? And I was like, that is crazy. And so, and I just thought, well, I'm just going to figure that out because it's not true, but I need to also understand why it's not true, because that's just who I am as a person. I have to like dig into everything and understand it. And I think that was part of like my processing too, right? Was I needed to learn. I needed to understand. I wanted to understand.
Not only that, you didn't know yet that you were going to be helping a lot of other people with this.
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, holy cow. As you very well know, it's just silly to even think that you might know what you're doing 10 years from now, because life and the universe have their own plans for us, don't they?
That's true. That's right.
But so it took a little bit of time once, we got home and once we were really, learning from Connor, like where he had been, like what was going on for him. And he started kind of unpacking all of this stuff.
And by the way, he kept this all to himself, except for telling maybe one or two people. That's
Correct.
Amazing.
I mean,
what was inside of him? Oh my goodness.
It just and it just came out. I mean, talk about, you hear the coming out sideways. It came out sideways. I mean, it came out in every possible way because he could finally relax, right? He finally knew that his home was safe, right? So that wasn't an issue. Creating a home that was safe, it was already safe. So we just needed to add extra safety to that and learn these pieces that we needed to learn. The grieving part was super interesting for me because I imagine so many people listening to this too, and you probably as well. Grief, I had always been taught, was you grieve when someone dies. Otherwise, you don't use the word grief. That's not a thing, right?
Well, not on this podcast, but yes.
Right, usually. Not on this podcast, but that's and I remember that being such a thing. So I never thought about it at the beginning. And I remember very clearly about 6 months, and I was sitting in the my son's counselor's office, and we were trying to figure out ways that we could support him and things that he needed. And thank God this man was gay, and he just knew, he was so in tune with Connor. He knew what I needed to understand and guide me. And I was sitting there and just crying because I was so worried about him. He was, was dealing with bullying. He was dealing with the whole gamut of things. And I was just and
then he's taking substances too.
Too. Yeah. I mean, so it was the whole, when you talk about checking all the boxes of maladaptive coping mechanisms, this kid checked them. And, but I said to him, I was I just feel my whole, my movie reel has exploded. And what I've come to learn over time as I've worked through this is that was my first realization of I am grieving. What I thought, all of this that I had thought I'd created, right, is now no longer. And what I thought for his future is now uncertain. And my future is uncertain. And our families, all of these things. And so it was kind of my first step into, oh, this is grief. And this is really important that I sit in this and understand what this is exactly and what it is specifically that I am grieving. And so super helpful.
Part of it was the loss of the son you had, and now you had to accept a new kid.
1,000%. Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, it was things grieving. I mean, we could talk about the layers and layers of things that I was grieving. And I will say also on top of that, about the same time, I'm the oldest of 3 kids, a very interesting family dynamic, but I was very, very close to we were bookend girls. So my youngest sister, she's 5 years younger than me. And about the same time, she became very, very ill. And she lived also in the Chicago area. She had never got married. We were her family, but she was uber successful in business and in that way, traveled the world all the time, got very, very ill, and ended up passing away 2 years ago. So in the midst of all of this, she had frontal temporal dementia. So it's, for anybody who's familiar with that disease, you grieve all the time because you're constantly grieving.
So now you're grieving 2 people.
Correct.
Living your life like that.
Yeah. So it was a lot.
It is a lot.
But it also became really important for me to understand grief and understand grief in that it's not something that has a beginning and an end, but something that is, and it's not something that's linear, right? And so, learning what that looked like for me and how to become really comfortable with being uncomfortable and sitting in that.
Well, were you also worried about, I mean, your son was dealing with social stigma and being bullied, but how about you and your community? Now you're coming out with a child who's gay. And I know you have another child who's also gay, and this was just the beginning.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with the social stigma? Did you go to
Well,
counseling or did you talk to people? Or what did you do about it? Because you had it in your own family.
right. All of the above. First of all, one of the things that we decided right at the beginning, the three of us, my husband Connor and I, we talked right away about who do you want to know this information and who do you want to wait to tell. And so, the first probably 6 to 12 months, it was a handful, only a small handful of people who he wanted to know. And so that certainly in some ways made it easier because we were keeping, we had just the wagons were circled and we were keeping it very internally and only with the closest, friends and family members who knew. And then I just lost my train of thought.
You're talking about the social stigma, and at first it was quiet because he only had certain people that he wanted to know.
Thank you.
That's right.
Goodness gracious, yes. So then once more people started knowing, we did start dealing with our friends. It's one of those things that there were people that I was nervous about telling who ended up being so beautiful and so just loving and accepting and affirming, which is even more important, right? And then people that I thought over time might come around never have. And I think that's been one of the most surprising things to me and all of this. I certainly, I was more concerned about my son's social, what was going on for him in a social way and what he was dealing with at school, and dealing with socially, and my other kids as well, right? How it was trickling down with them. I've always had a very small group of friends, and I was if they aren't going to love him for who they are, these are not my friends, right? I mean, that's kind of my
called
thing.
As you get older, I look at it as a reason, season, lifetime. Some people prefer a reason, a season, and things change, and they're really not for the lifetime, but they're part of your growth.
Yep.
They got you to a certain point, but now you're kind of moving on, going past it with what's going on, and they cannot step up to that plate.
Right. Exactly. And it was a thing that I too, I was, before that I had been, I was a very typical oldest child. I was a major people pleaser and peacemaker. And, when you have a crisis with your child, you have choices to make. And one of the choices was, no longer am I playing either of those roles because this is my priority. So
you're not going to be worried about what other people think anymore?
Right? I mean, and that is not it, as you probably know also, that's not something you just you can decide that in one day, but it doesn't go away in one day. So, and I just remember one part of that question was, what did I do? Yes, I had lots of therapy, and thank God, I started seeing a therapist 2 years before Connor came out. And it was I started seeing this woman.
Really? Was there? Yeah. Why did you see her?
Is so interesting. A friend of mine dragged me along to this workshop she was going to on self-care. And I was like, self-care? What is this self-care thing? I don't know. I mean, I had all little kids and I was, a Gen X mom. We don't do self-care.
Take care of myself. What?
Self what? Exactly. I can put myself first. Sometimes that's amazing. And so I remember sitting in this workshop being this is amazing. I'm allowed to do this. This is so cool. So I started working with that woman who did that workshop. She's still my therapist to this day. We've been together 11 years.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. I have a similar story with my grief and things I went through, and I had worked with a therapist for a long time. Yeah.
Aren't you just so grateful when you think, Okay, I mean, there have been so many instances in my life where I'm like, oh, the universe is so looking out for me because that was just a no-brainer to do that.
I
And
agree with you. I agree with you. It was part of your path. You're
yep,
in your own way. You're a role model and a healer with what you're doing. And it took you step by step by step by step by step. And the people who couldn't meet you in your steps, they get detached from, right? And
yep,
the ones, and all of a sudden there are sometimes other people who step up to fill new spaces.
that's right. That's absolutely 1,000% right. Yep.
I mean, it's amazing. So let me ask you this. Um, okay, so you created that healing affirming home and
Yeah.
with all of that. But there's a question you had posed. In what ways can grief show up in parenting? And how can families embrace radical compassion and resilience as healing tools for everyone involved? So now, you're in the family, this is all happening, but like there's this dynamic going on with everybody. So how you set the tone for this, you and your husband, right? Was he in
Right.
therapy too?
He is now, but it took him a number of years longer. We did a lot of family therapy too with Connor, and so once we kind of moved through that, then he was like, "Okay, this is a good idea. I think that I definitely need this." I mean, my husband is one of those like perpetually the glass is half full, like just like the great. He's kind of magical. So there are times that I'm like, well, I'm so happy that that's just the way that you're wired.
Thank
But
goodness you're blessed with such an open-minded
oh,
man who's
I
willing
mean,
to work with you because you do not every guy is like that.
no. And I will say that when we started, when all of this started happening, when we worked with an educational consultant, and trying to figure out, major solutions for Connor. And one of our first meetings with her, she sat us down and she was like, I just want you both to know that um, families that go through this many times get divorced. And I was like, we both walked out of there and we were like, really? And I think it was almost like we took it as a challenge. We were like, well, we're going to show you.
Good for you and good for your husband, really. I have
Oh
to.
yeah, he is a rock star. I mean, the stuff that he has, like, he's amazing. I'm very lucky.
And so is he. Don't forget that self-love too.
That's right. That's right.
You want to tell us about these different types and layers of grief and how healing through one surfaced another?
Oh my goodness. Yes, there are just so many. Well, I think that's one of the beautiful things about healing, because when you do, I mean,
It's like in layers, right?
it is totally layers, and you don't know what's under the next, right? So doing that work is so, I have this for forever and ever. I've been using the phrase embrace the beauty in the messiness, because it is, while uncomfortable and while hard, it's
Very
also
hard.
really, with all of that difficulty, also unearths beauty. It unearths traits in yourself or in others or in the way that you see the world or the way that you communicate and connect with other people that you just didn't have the layer above that, right? So with each one, in my experience, it's never been super clear to me, like, okay, I'm finished with this layer and I'm going on to the next. It's always kind of that looking back and being like, oh, like this is where I've come from. And
I
now I'm
scaled that
here.
mountain. Now I got another one.
Exactly, exactly. And so in being able to see them kind of layer, almost as layered experience, right? Like as a layered evolution, more so than like checking a box of like, well, I've got to get through this before I can get through this. And it's the same thing with grief. I think a lot of conventional thinking around grief is that it's these different, you are in denial and then you feel angry and then you feel, I've checked that one. I felt angry. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. And it's not like that
Flips
at all.
back and forth between all of it.
It sure does. And I mean, it's one of those things that, again, you just embrace it, because one day you will feel like, oh, I really am at peace, and it feels like settled. And the very next day you could read something or hear something or
Get
smell
triggered.
something, and
You're triggered again.
Yep.
But it's so wonderful. You and your husband got into therapy with an open mind and you wanted help. There are some people who give it they don't walk their talk. They go there, but they don't want to really change. They don't
Oh,
really want to learn.
no.
They're just over and over, right? Would you say?
Oh, 1,000. Yes. Oh my goodness. I keep saying that. But yes, I have a very, very good friend of mine. We've been friends for decades and decades, which is why I can put up with what I'm about to tell you, which is that she is a perpetual victim and she has been to therapy. She could tell you everything that's in that therapist manual about how you handle grief and how you handle trauma and how you handle disappointment or whatever it may be. But oh my goodness, does she thrive on being in crisis?
She loves drama.
Yes, she does. And I've gotten to the point with her where I give her a certain amount of time and then I'm done. And I always say,
did you learn about that in therapy?
Yeah.
How to establish boundaries?
Boundaries. Oh my gosh, like the most magical thing ever, right? And so, I'll give her enough listening. I'm like, okay, I think it's time you need to go talk to your therapist again. Like it's time. Like at some point, I just keep thinking, at some point, it's going to click, and it's going to be like, oh.
You're hoping. She may never get it till the next time she comes back.
That's right. And she may not. This might be what she's here to experience, right? And this is and oh my gosh, and that in and of itself, can I just say, like, from where I was even 10 years ago and my belief system to I did the whole deconstruction thing all alongside all of this as well, to now thinking, yeah, I am healing generational trauma. That's healing
what you're doing.
Lifetime trauma, right? And so now, next time around, who knows what I get to do, right?
It's a picnic. It's a party. So let me ask you this. You did therapy, but you did other modalities also. What were some of the other modalities? And you made the comment that their order matters. And it led to what you're doing. So
I think that what I meant by that, I've been thinking about that since you had repeated that back to me. And I think that
what is she talking about?
What is she talking about? I think that I meant that it's good to have a base of understanding of doing that personal work. I don't think that you can jump into, and I could be wrong. If somebody wants to prove me wrong, absolutely go for it. But I think that some of these more intense modalities would be just too much to be a starting point. And so I think starting yourself someplace gentle, which I think that, a grief therapist is a gentle place to start with healing, and then moving into more specific modalities. I've tried a lot of, or I've not even tried, I've experienced a lot of different things and have been very open to, if somebody will say, oh, you should try this, I'll try it. And I'm just curious about the way things work. So I have met with a number of shamans. Now, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, even if I knew what a shaman was, I would have said absolutely not. In fact, to this day, I don't know that I could give you a clear definition of one, but I have worked with them and it has been fascinating learning every single time about myself and about energy and about interacting with other human beings and about interacting with the universe. And so I found that to be just extraordinary. One of the most helpful things that I did was working with a nervous system specialist.
Wow, that's cool.
She, is to this day one of my most favorite human beings. But I worked with her for about 1.5 years and just learning all about, we started with just fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, that very, very, and what was kind of sending me into each of those, and why my go-to was freeze, or I would dissociate, right? And everybody has their...
I'm sure, I bet you that came from your childhood somewhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it did. Holy cow. My next, offline, we have to talk about mediumship because I'm in search of a good medium. But
I got one for you.
That has been one of the most fascinating things is doing that, like healing of, and like cutting the threads and like doing all of that of like things that, holy cow. And each time it hasn't been like a right away, but it's been like all of a sudden a few days or a few weeks later, I will become aware of the way I'm moving in the world, or the way that I'm speaking about something so much easier or so much more freely. And I think, look at that. That's amazing, right?
Because through all of this, you're releasing blockages, and also like it gets easier, but people don't realize that that it really is a wonderful feeling to let go of that stuff that's been like an anchor, right? Holding you down, that you weren't even really aware of it.
No. Well, that's it. You don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what's like weighing you down, what's hanging on you, what is causing you to see the world in a certain way. And I think the key to all of this is just a small shift to being curious, to just allowing yourself to, instead of course, it makes you feel more safe to be able to say, this is good, this is bad. I'm like having that judgment, right? There's some like faux safety in that. But when we allow ourselves to just shift for a moment into curiosity, and to have that, like, I wonder what that's like, or I wonder what would happen if I did this, or I wonder what that person's experience is like, right? What is it like to walk in their shoes?
It sounds to me like you've moved from black and white to gray.
Oh, it is a world of gray. It's a world of technicolors, really.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about your book, Parenting with Pride, Unlearn Bias and Embrace, Empower, and Love Your LGBTQ plus teen. You explain 4 transformations: embrace, educate, empower, and love, that can help parents towards fully supporting and loving their child. So let it rip. Tell us about that.
Oh, my goodness. So this is one of my most favorite things that came to me kind of early on, as I was really fully immersed in our experience as a family, and beginning to pull it apart and really think about like how we got from point to point to point. And I realized that it was kind of an order. And so I think of it as, kind of the 3 first things: embrace, educate, and of course, educate also includes unlearning, empower, and then love is like a big bubble around all of it. So that's how in my brain I picture it. So I like to share that first before I explain them, just so you can picture it in your brain that way. But I think the first thing that we have to do with anything that is difficult, it's not just having a child who comes out as gay, but anything that might be a surprise in your life, or a struggle in your life, or you are working through grief, or anything, right? We have to embrace that, whatever that is. And embracing means, it can mean acknowledging it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're like, yes, this is going on. It's just, it is. Acknowledging that it is, and acknowledging, okay, what do I need to do, right? This is, I love this person, right? So for me, it was, this is my child. I unconditionally love him. What do I need to know, right? So it immediately moved into knowing what did I need to learn to be the best parent for him?
How lucky he is. How lucky he is.
That's very kind. I feel very lucky too. I always think, I'm like, because of this kid's, 60 seconds of courage. Wow. A lot more than 60 seconds, but you know what I mean. Because of that kid's courage, not just my life, like all 6 of us, our lives are utterly changed forever. Like 180 evolved. Like it is extraordinary.
I would bet you also that you like yourselves better now too, don't you? Yes.
I love myself now, which I could never have said before. And I think that goes for every single one of them, right? Like we are freer. We are way more fun. There's, it's probably a lot more swearing in my house than there ever was before. I mean, there's a lot more, just like they were a lot freer to just be them, right? Like it took off so many, constraints of this is who we should be in this life. And
your
that
masks. It removed your masks.
It did. It did 1,000%. Oh my goodness. And so much fun. I mean, it chaotic, but so much fun. And just who they are becoming as young adults now is just the most, I mean, I just every day I'm like, I just feel so lucky that I get to be the mom of these kids.
I think it's wonderful. Heather, I want to ask you, how soon after your son coming out did your second child come out, or was it the second or the third one? What is? So
it's my third one.
Four.
So
your
my
third one's also gay.
Yes. So
it's a guy. It's a boy.
A girl. So
you've got a gay girl and a gay son.
I do.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have LG. It was probably, it's funny. I actually knew she was gay before she came out. So it was probably maybe 2 years after Connor came out that I began to realize like, oh, I think that she might be, but of course I didn't say anything. And it was probably another 2 years after that she came to me one day and she was like, Mom, I think I might like girls. So I was like, I think you might.
So you've got 2 and 2.
I do. I have two and two.
How interesting.
It's so interesting. So I literally have every single kind of like relationship, right? Like I giggle. I'm like, this is so funny. I have like a boy who likes boys, a girl who likes boys, a girl who likes girls, and a boy who likes girls. How fun is that?
It is fun. It's fascinating. It's fascinating.
It is.
It is. So you got actionable tools and mental shifts you provide in Parenting with Pride that help parents support their teens and themselves to help them become the catalyst for change in their communities, which is sort of what we're talking about, because you're shifting through your family and your acceptance and being out there, you're shifting perceptions. And whatever happened with your very conservative parents? Did they come around? No, they still haven't come around. Oh my.
No, it is, and that's another form of grief that we could totally talk about, right? It's grieving relationships that of people who are still on this plane with us, that the relationship is not what you hoped it would be. It has been a probably my most recent grieving is grieving those relationships.
Yeah, because in a way you've lost them before they've left.
Yeah.
Really, it's hard. It's very hard.
It's very, very difficult. And I have chosen, I think everybody has a right to do whatever they want with their parents because we don't know. Right. And I think, I would never judge anybody who chose to go no contact. For this point in time, I have chosen to not go no contact, but it is very low contact and it's very boundaried contact. So
yeah, and it's actually setting an example for your gay kids too, because they need the boundaries and all that, and you're supporting them. How do you teach people to become a catalyst for change in their communities, to adjust to this whole new paradigm that people are still walking around?
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, I think it is. It's really teaching. I think it kind of goes back to that, like letting go of that fear. I mean, all of it boils down to fear of something. And so when we're able to, kind of one of the first, maybe easiest things for a person to do is to breathe, right? It's to breathe. It's to pause and start inserting pauses in your day when you feel yourself coming up against something that is uncomfortable, something that you don't understand, something that maybe yesterday or last week you would have immediately judged or seen as something that divides you from another person, because we're seeing so much of that right now, and it's very purposeful.
I mean, it's very purposeful, and we're seeing, and there's this in your world and in so many other worlds, it's the fear of the other.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So when you feel yourself coming up against that, I mean, first of all, I give so much grace to people and I have a lot of compassion for that because it is insidiously just programmed in us. Everywhere you look, everything you listen to, everything you see it's in there somehow. So it has to be an active effort on your part to deprogram that, right? So the pause is the easiest way to do that. When you come up against that, pause and recognize that's what's happening.
And how do you handle that though? How do you handle that like in your community if you're coming against unkind remarks and different things that go on?
Well, I think that when you are able to pause it gives you a moment to decide how you want to handle it, right? And if the at bare minimum it is you don't join in with the comments that are going on when maybe a week ago you might have joined in or you might have added a comment or I mean that's you start where you can, right? This is how growth works. You don't immediately jump to here, right? You start with little tiny steps. And I think that is also a really important thing for people to understand, that it is all baby steps and it is all steps of just becoming really aware of what is going on around you, aware of your thoughts, of how your body is reacting to what's going on around you, because your body gives you a ton of information all the time. And then really becoming more aware of the people you're interacting with. What are you adding to those conversations? Is it possible to shift those conversations? Do you feel like you have the strength or the courage or the knowledge to do that? And that all takes time, but it's something that each one of us is very capable of doing.
Yeah, and I guess it's the other part about it is in a community setting, you get to figure out who's open to changing and supporting you and being part of your world and who just can't go there. And that's okay. You can bless them and wish them well.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And it might sting in the moment. It might be surprising in the moment. And then when you're able to pause, then you realize, oh, okay.
Season. It is what that is. Yeah. Right. So let's talk about Chrysalis Mama. I know you have a powerful platform that so many people now want to avail themselves of that offers inclusive coaching, LGBTQ plus and human first consulting, and storytelling driven workshops. This all sounds like fascinating that invite people to show up authentically and grow with courage and compassion. Tell us all about that.
All of that. Well, this is like a perfect time to be talking about this because I am shifting from Chrysalis Mama. I've had this like whole kind of branding visibility thing going on. So for the first 8 years that I've been doing this, I've done everything kind of behind Chrysalis Mama. And I love the name because, you know, chrysalis, of course, is how a butterfly changes from caterpillar to butterfly. So It's a very transformational message there. But I'm now shifting into kind of being Heather Hester. And so identifying, you know, letting myself be more seen and my message and my voice be more heard. And so doing that, you know, through the book, but also through my podcast. The platform is still doing all of those wonderful things that you said. I just thought I would note that I'm changing it. So Chrysalis, and chrysalis is hard to spell. So that was another tripping point. But yeah, so I do.
So why are you going to be calling it now?
It's going under Heather Hester right now as like just the umbrella Heather Hester, but it will eventually have a new name to it. So that is a TBD. But Heather Hester is also easier to spell. So
sure it is.
Yeah, so HH, that's right. I do work with parents one-on-one.
If someone has a child who's just come out as gay or somebody is grappling with that.
Yep.
What would be their first? They could listen to your podcast.
They could listen to my podcast. Yes, there are 6 years of information on that podcast. They could get my book, Parenting with Pride, also chock full of amazing, really helpful information for, especially for a kid who's just coming out and a parent. If you are really struggling, if you are dealing with really specific, painful issues, I absolutely work with parents. And I do always speak ahead of time with you before you just jump into working with me. So if you have questions, if you're kind of curious about, where am I with this? I do have a discovery call that I answer all this.
So you learned how to be a coach. You took coaching.
I took coaching. I'm not certified under any of the certifications, but I've taken a lot of different courses to do that, to learn how to do that. And I've created my own program that I work with parents through. So if you work with me as a coach, it's a 4-month program that I work on very, very specific things. And then I do workshops once a month. I do.
Are they online? Are they remote?
Yeah, they're online. So I would say, the easiest way, if this is like sparking interest for you as you're listening to this, just get on my email list and you will find out. I'm not a big spammy emailer. I am, when I have important information to share, I share it. I have a twice a month newsletter and then important information. So you'll learn about my workshops that I am doing at least once a month, and I'm starting to amp that up a little bit more. So that's a great way to just get in and get information. Yeah.
They sound fascinating, and really. And don't you have a special promo? Because we're going to put all this information in our show notes about your platforms and everything. I'm so excited.
There are so many ways that you can connect with me. And that is actually my promo. I was trying to decide what would be the best way, the best one for your community. And I think probably my most favorite one that I'm working on with like a wider group of people right now is my Substack. And I do weekly writing in there that is very almost, I want to say free writing, but as a writer, like that is my joy. And that is something that I just, as stuff comes through me, I write. And
sort of like automatic writing.
It is automatic writing. But I don't write only about parenting and LGBTQ kid. Actually, my last 3 articles were about grief. And I talk a lot about, greater, broader, more human topics, things that we are all dealing with as human beings. So my offer to people listening is 3 months free in my membership. I have as if you're familiar with Substack, that's the way it works. And so there will be a code that Irene will have that you can use to
we'll put it right in the show notes.
Come join me on Substack.
Absolutely. And she's so friendly and welcoming. I'm sure you'll love being there with her. So my other question is, my famous question that I love to ask: what is the Heather message about the importance of healing to share with our listeners?
Oh.
Turn this at our passion, get people out of their suffering.
I mean, it's going to sound like you stumped me on this one. I'm trying to think of a concise way to wrap everything that I just said up into one sentence.
Well, I do know that you believe you must heal to grow.
You absolutely must heal to grow. I think I'm going to circle back to one of my previous taglines or comments, which is when you are able to embrace that beauty and the messiness and really participate in the healing, the joy follows.
And that's my second question. What is your tip for finding joy in life?
And there it is.
Yeah. Heal. And you'll open up those spaces that have been blocked, and then you'll start to feel joy, even if you're grieving and other things are not good.
Even if you're grieving, absolutely. It can feel so frightening to let go and to walk those steps that you need to walk when you heal, when you are grieving, when you are processing through something very difficult. And when you get on the other side of that, it's extraordinary. It is really extraordinary it's almost like you can say, oh, I'm so proud of myself for all the work I just did and all of that growth. And of course, when you're in it, you don't feel that. But when you get to that, I don't want to say the other side, but when you get kind of through it to a certain point and you can start to look back and acknowledge what you've done.
It's amazing.
It is amazing.
I kind of liken it too that we're carrying a backpack full of all our old issues and all the old baggage and all the old stuff. And then as we heal it, we're dropping stuff out of the backpack. And all of a sudden, you're not carrying, you didn't even know how carrying that stuff around with you was so debilitating for you.
No. Oh my goodness. I think that's such a great analogy. I think that we can, carry extra weight on us physically when we are carrying so much too. And I mean, a lot of these things can start to manifest in a very physical way. So, that is probably a conversation for another day. But
it's another one. We'll come back and we'll talk about that one.
Exactly.
Heather, your story is really inspiring, and your loving wisdom reminds everyone that transformation is possible, that love can be expansive, and that when we choose to lead with humanity, we create the conditions for healing for ourselves and for one another. I want to thank you from my heart for sharing your extraordinary story with us today, and I wish you and yours abundant blessings always.
Thank you. It was such a joy to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Grief and Rebirth. Remember, you can dive deeper into everything we've discussed by checking out the show notes and all past episodes at ireneweinberg.com. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Irene S. Weinberg on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and wherever you love to hang out online. Plus, we're on YouTube, so be sure to subscribe and never miss a video. For those of you listening, you'll find links to my 2 books, Good to the Last Drop and They Serve Bagels in Heaven, in the show notes. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see those books listed right above, so don't miss out. And here comes a special treat. If you sign up for Audible as a first-time user using my link, which you can find in the show notes, you can get They Serve Bagels in Heaven for free. And finally, people often ask me what I read, what I use, and what I recommend for healing and self-care. So I've carefully curated a compilation of those items to share with you. You can head over to kit.co/grief and rebirth to check them out. And to my cherished Grief and Rebirth podcast fans, stay tuned and see you again soon. Until next time, many blessings.